everyone, and welcome to our final Healthy Politics episode of the year, I think. I mean, sometimes things change and we might change our minds, but we're discussing the eternal intersection of healthcare in the United States and American politics. My name is Nick Carls. I'm the Director of Compliance or Employee Benefit Compliance here at Holmes Murphy, and with me is my esteemed co-host, Den Bishop, former Vice President of Holmes Murphy and our longtime healthcare strategist extraordinaire. Say hey, Den.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing great. Better rested than the last time we did this. Hopefully, I don't follow or trip all over my words like I did last time. I think I'm feeling good here, and we're probably gonna have a shorter episode today, right? We talked about a lot of kind of what was known on the last episode, and not too much has changed, right? It kind of fell out the way that we thought it would. Looks like you're gonna have 53 Republican senators. You're going to have a 1 to 2 seat majority for Republicans in the House. That one's still a little whatever, but it's going to be a Republican majority, a thin one. And then, of course, we have President-elect Trump coming into the White House at the beginning of January.
And we are in the middle of his cabinet appointments.
And they've been interesting already. It's going to be a show, as it turns out. And I think the one that you and I both want to talk about right off the bat, because it has the most it's the most pertinent to the conversations that we've been having. That's Robert Kennedy Jr. Being put up for Secretary of or for HHS. What do you think about that, Den?
Well,
to put you on the spot.
Yeah. Well, President-elect Trump had previously said in the prior month that he was not going to appoint Robert Kennedy as the Secretary of HHS, but he was going to have him go wild on healthcare. That was the quote and kind of the discussion. So obviously something changed because he decided that he would appoint him to that role to head up kind of all things health related, Medicare, Medicaid, the FDA. It just, there's a lot of health related items that fall under HHS. One criticism that I have heard is that, well, he's not even a physician. And I just did a little research to see the current Secretary of HHS, Xavier Becerra, is former Attorney General from California and a former congressman. And he is an attorney, not a physician. In fact, of the 25 secretaries of HHS, only 3 have been physicians. So this is a bureaucratic, not a clinical appointment, although all things clinical in this country kind of fall under this big regulatory umbrella of HHS.
Yeah, well, and 2 interesting thoughts on that. The first one is, you had pointed out before we started here that the last doctor to head up HHS was actually appointed by Trump in his first term, his first administration.
Yes. Tom Price was his first Secretary of HHS and was one of the 3 physicians, was a Trump appointment, but not this time around.
Yep.
This time around, it's a former Democrat, and I don't know what we say Robert Kennedy's political affiliation is at this point. He was kind of running as an independent, but definitely not a staunch Republican, definitely no longer, even though it's from the Kennedy family. I guess, if you think about historic families in the Democratic Party, the Kennedys, they were the Clintons and the Obamas before there were Clintons and Obamas.
Right.
That is,
right.
The legacy of the Democratic Party. So politically, I think it is a big deal to have someone from that family be in the Trump administration. Some view that very positive, some view it very negative, but it does carry, I think, a little political significance, nothing in terms of significance in terms of policy making. And maybe we turn there to kind of what we think or understand of kind of his platforms in healthcare.
Yeah, well, and actually I did have to make one other point, and that is you had mentioned that, the current HHS, the Secretary of HHS is an attorney, and fun fact is that most attorneys believe that they're also doctors. We tend to think that we're experts in everything that we touch. So just keep that in mind as we're dealing with these individuals.
Thank you, Dr. Carls.
There it is. I just play. Sometimes I play one on TV. What I think is interesting about the Kennedy appointment, without even getting too far into some of his policies as far as fluoride, right, and vaccines, is that I've received a number of questions from our clients already saying, "Hey, what do you think about this appointment? Do you think this is going to have an impact?" And it's, well, there's he'll be the one steering the ship at least at the beginning if he gets confirmed by the Senate, which isn't guaranteed. We'll see, but it's just this little bit of a reminder that while he can try to set kind of the agenda and the course, there is still a lot that has to happen in order for you to have policy changes, right?
Yeah, yeah. We kind of take from that, and let's take current Secretary Becerra, who is in place, and I'm going to guess the vast majority of those watching this had no idea who the Secretary of Health
Exactly.
and Human Services was, or that he was a staunch Medicare for all
Yeah.
believer in terms of his position on healthcare going into that role. He was quoted as being a very firm Medicare for all proponent. But there has been no even attempt at Medicare for all in his 4 years in the role. And you're exactly right. Just because somebody believes a certain thing or historically has been in a certain place doesn't mean that they can carry it forward in this position.
Yeah, because I mean, it all has to be done through rulemaking, right? You have to put out a notice, you have to submit for public comment, you have to do all this stuff, and then it gets challenged in the courts invariably, right? So there's just a whole bunch of things that has to happen for this appointment to actually impact policy, right? And so we have to keep that in mind as we see who Trump nominates to head up the DOL, who he ends up nominating to head the IRS. All of it, it's like it has no doubt about it. It has an impact. You're setting direction, but ultimately there's a lot of bureaucracy that has to be followed. And then there's, as you're pointing out, the limits, right? They can't, especially now with some of the Supreme Court decisions, they can't create new rules. They can't create new laws or anything. They can create new rules. They can't create new laws, right? They can't change the law or anything. They have to work within its strictures. So ultimately, some of these initial appointments, they're interesting, but I don't think policy wise we can read too much into them.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
And if you take where proposed Secretary Kennedy kind of fits in terms of belief in his history, I think he's pretty well known that he has concerns over vaccines, and
Yep.
that is troubling some in the medical community. That are we going to go backwards in terms of vaccines based on just his position and being outspoken in that? He has stepped down from his role as CEO of a not-for-profit that was kind of going down the anti-vax
Mhm.
space. But that's clearly where he has been on that. He's had a lot of comments about that which the FDA has approved to be in food that is consumed in the United States that is not consumed in other places. So are we going to get more restrictions in terms of chemicals in our food? I don't know. Maybe.
But it
Um,
can even do that as from HHS, or does that have to come from the FDA?
well, it's
Does he have the
FDA, which
authority?
falls under HHS.
That's a good point.
So it's kind of under that umbrella is, if you kind of think about all the things that are there, it does get it, that umbrella does include the FDA.
It
Um,
includes the OCR, the Office of Civil Rights, I suppose. Yeah, when you look at the way that that branches out, that's a really good point.
yeah. So, but again, as you said, just because somebody has a stance, it's there. I do think if he is approved, you will see um, more alternative approaches to things, maybe a
Sure.
little easier to get, because he has said that he would like to see significant investments in alternative medicine, functional medicine
Yep.
kind of things, maybe a little more open to that than historically the federal government has been to things that what I would say is might even be considered non-Western medicine
Sure.
at times. But it'll be interesting to see.
Well, and one other point that I want to make on this before we kind of turn the page here is a lot of what he's talking about doing, a lot of what we would actually see, I think, from the Trump administration is generally going to be more of lowering limits. That's probably not the best way to put it, but if for employers that want to do flu shot things for their employees, they're not going to take away the ability to do that, right? They're not going to stop employers or individuals from getting the vaccines. It's more of, are we going to have vaccine mandates in the future? Stuff like
Yeah,
that.
if you think in terms of the way I would phrase where I think the Trump administration will go, Robert Kennedy included or not, more choice,
Yeah.
less restrictions, less bureaucracy. That I mean, it's if you kind of think what's the Trump theme and what happened last time. Last time around, it was more choice was added to the Affordable Care Act. That's really about the only thing material that got done under his last administration. But I think that would be the theme of a Trump administration. And if somebody's on the Republican side of things, they would look at that and say, hey, that's great, less government bureaucracy and that. If you're on the Democratic side and you're a never Trump, no way, and what are we going to do? Then it's going to be that, oh no, he's going to take away the rules and there'll be chaos. I mean, so your view of these things they'll ultimately be they'll taste like what you feel about Trump anyway. So if you're positive on Trump, then you're going to view the less restrictions, more choice as a great thing. If you're negative on Trump, you're going to look at that and say this is chaos and all of a sudden things are going to be really messy because nobody's really minding the store. But it will really fall around where somebody feels politically as much or more than anything that really happens,
Yeah.
because healthcare is not Trump's priority. And I think that's probably my main point is it was not his main priority in his first administration. There are other things that helped get him elected. Healthcare was not one of them.
Right.
And so I don't think he's going to waste a whole lot of his political capital on taking big risks to change healthcare. He'll let Kennedy go where Kennedy wants to go, but I don't think he's going to burn a lot of matches trying to make big change in healthcare.
Well, and to your point, and we're risking being redundant all of a sudden here, but there is low hanging fruit as far as saying, okay, back to the limited duration, short term limited duration health plans. Maybe it's pushing, saying, all right, for those of you that want to do healthcare ministries, here's another way that we can expand that or make that more accessible, whatever. So there are things like that that you could do where, again, you're expanding. Now, some people might not realize that some of those options aren't real health insurance, right? If you get cancer, it's not going to do much for you. And that's where the Democrats would come in and say, hey, you're taking away the guardrails. We can go on and on about that, right? I mean, it's kind of it's what is good, what is bad. And it's funny, I was just, as we are talking about this, I was thinking about what my old boss from a long time ago used to say, and that was, first we'll see, then we'll know. Right. That was kind of every time something kind of crazy was happening, he'd say, first we'll see, then we'll know. And I think that really applies to what we have going on right now. And so I would
Yep.
say, I think with that, we take a little break.
I think we put a bow on 2024 and say that where we are is where we are. I don't anticipate major shifts, major changes. I think there will be incremental items in the next several years.
Yeah. And so I think what we do is we perhaps pick this back up in January. Everyone can enjoy their holidays. And then in January, we can look at what's been done in the first 20 days or so. See if anything absolutely insane has happened. I mean, for myself, as I said in the last one, I anticipate being extremely busy. Um, I get too excited about this kind of stuff. So everyone will have to forgive me and excuse me as I kind of nerd out on this. But it should be interesting. And so, yeah, I look forward to continuing this conversation in the new year. But with that, I just want to thank everyone for bearing or sticking with us through the election cycle. It was definitely an interesting one. And then we hope that you'll join us next year. But as we always like to say, it doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. If there's something that we talked about or questions that you have, reach out to your Holmes Murphy representative. They know to get in touch with us. We love talking about this stuff. And beyond that, until the next time, we'll talk to you guys in the new year. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Nick.